Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the For Evansville podcast, where we talk about the needs and dreams of our city and how we can reimagine our faith as a catalyst for flourishing in our community. Today's a little bit different. We're doing sort of a bonus episode in between two miniseries where we're here with, I'm Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
And I'm here with Sarah and Adrian. And we're just going to take this episode to sort of reflect on, we're halfway through the year and we've done a lot of cool things at For Evansville outside of the podcast. And so we just wanted to take an episode to share some of our favorite things that have happened this year, and also to tell you about our next mini-series that we'll be starting and some of the things that we'll be doing the rest of this year. But before we do that, before we talk about all the great things that we've had the chance to do, we thought we'd take a moment to share some of the things that we would do if we weren't doing this work. So the backstory behind this is we all work in the same office, literally the same office, not even separate cubicles.
Yeah,
and so sometimes
the same room.
It's a big room with 3 desks.
We usually
not even a big room. It's just a room.
It's just a room, an average size room with 3 desks. And typically, I would say around like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you sort of hit that afternoon lull. We're all working away, and we just need some kind of creative brain break. Yep. And so just sort of naturally, we end up in these either really obscure conversations or inspiration strikes, and we come up with these really creative ideas. And we've come up with sort of $1 million idea board, where anytime we have one of these ideas, we say, that's got to go on the $1 million idea board.
And the $1 million idea board lives in our brains.
In our brains.
Yeah.
If someone would like to sponsor a big, nice whiteboard that we can put up and actually have $1 million idea board, that would be great.
Or if you're just looking for a good idea and you'd like to buy one of them from us, we will sell you the idea and all the rights to it.
Yeah.
Maybe
but
not. If
you're going to get 2 for free.
Yeah, you're going to hear Sarah's, and so if you do it, then I think Sarah should get a
like 10%'s fine.
Yeah. So Sarah, why don't you kick us off and just tell us, you're really good at asking questions, and one of the questions you asked.
I think Adrian asked this question.
Oh,
we were walking back from, I think it was Monday church. We go to sometimes on Mondays with some folks downtown. And the question was, if you were starting, was it a business?
A coffee shop.
A coffee shop.
Specifically a coffee shop.
Yeah.
What would the theme
What would the theme be? What would it look like? And I was like, okay, I've actually thought about this. A coffee shop, but also a plant shop. Like they're the same place. And so it'd be a place where you come get your coffee. You could also buy plants. And I know some of the coffee shops have plants in them, but this would be dedicated for, like, you could come
like
in.
Like a full-on plant shop.
Full-on plant shop.
Not just a coffee shop with plants.
Right.
Yeah.
And like where you could propagate things, you could learn about it. You could have groups where you come in and have like classes, build things, like make your own. But also you get your coffee, like good coffee. And I feel like those 2 things are very popular right now. Where people are like getting plants. Plants are very popular. People are talking about them all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously we
spending
love coffee.
a lot of money on them.
So what if the mugs, let's just, this is what we do. We go too far with it. What if the mugs were like planters?
Perfect.
Or something, if you stayed
Don't planters have holes in the bottom?
Depends
on the kind.
You have to hold it over your head and let the coffee.
We can figure this out.
Those kind of have those little saucers, so you just have to hold the saucer with it.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
And then I was thinking the library, actually, I think it was last summer or 2 summers ago, they had a bookshelf that was dedicated to people who wanted to like drop off propagated plants. And it was kind of like a leave one, take one.
Oh, yeah.
And so people could share the different types of plants. But it was like, if you want to take somebody's, then you need to leave one as well. And I was like, that's a
cool
great idea. But
then
it could be a part of this coffee shop community space.
Man, our library has so many cool things like that.
It really does.
It's great. So that's one idea. And what was this coffee shop going to be called?
I don't remember, but can I tell you guys a quick way off topic? This is really what happens.
Okay, great.
But when you're talking about the library, I did something for the first time ever since I've lived in Evansville, at least, which I've been in Evansville 22 years.
You went to the library?
I not just went to the library, I checked out a book. like
Oh.
a physical book. I've used the digital copies, but I'd never go and actually get a physical book.
Never
Really?
been to the library and get it.
Not like taking a book. No,
Wow.
I know. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
And so what I thought in my head, I was like, oh, there's this book that I really want to read. And normally I would just buy it.
Yeah.
And then it would just sit in my house for 2 years. I'm like, I never read that. What
my
if I
goodness.
just borrowed it for, whatever, 2 or 3 weeks? If I read it, great. And if I don't,
Yeah.
take it back.
Well, maybe there's even like an incentive to actually read the book because it's like, oh, I have to
a
bring this
timeline,
back. Maybe
you're
it
under
won't sit
time.
on your shelf.
I use the digital,
I'll
like,
return it.
EVPL, like,
Hoopla
Yeah.
or Libby or whatever.
I use those all the time.
Yeah.
But I hadn't actually been in, and the girl was looking at me real funny. I was like, what do I do? She was like, no, you can have it now. And I'm like, oh, I don't need to do anything else. And then when I brought it back, I'm like, here's the book. And she's like, thanks. And I'm like, do I need to do anything? She goes, nope. Okay. Just
Yep.
left. So,
Yep.
okay, now we're off topic. What was
Yeah.
it going to be called?
I thought you said it was going to be called Propagate,
Oh, Propagate's pretty good.
but I
Yeah,
don't
there
remember
was
for
two.
sure.
Rooted? Was
Rooted.
that another?
Rooted,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rooted or
that was
Propagate.
one. Yeah.
I feel like Rooted, Propagate, both of those. I think we can make some great logos. Anybody out there wants to make a logo, feel free.
Yeah.
Send it to us. We'll continue this conversation, and someday we can all have plants and coffee at the same time.
Yep, it's on.
Yeah.
It's on the idea board. Another idea that we had, which we've actually talked about a number of times, and I feel like it's slowly developed over time,
Yes. it
was,
has.
and I don't actually know how this idea started,
This is more relevant to our work.
but it really was just this beautiful strike of inspiration. I feel like that we all contributed to. We are going to write a children's book called Captain Elijah and the Ghost Barge. I think what happened was we have a pretty good view of the riverfront from our office, and I think it was one of those days where it was real foggy, and there was just like this
And the barges look
ominous,
specifically eerie,
ghostly.
or
Yeah,
especially
there was
eerie,
this
I guess.
ominous fog just rolling in off the Ohio and just like a devouring downtown.
Yeah.
and it was like it just was the scene from this
Captain Elijah
story.
Ghost
And
Barge.
so this story has developed a little bit to be almost a parody of A Christmas Carol that we were going to have somebody, sort of grumpy and discontent with Evansville, and they're like the Scrooge sort of character, bah humbug to Evansville. And then Captain Elijah rolls in his ghost barge and takes this person through a journey of Evansville's history and Evansville's present and Evansville's future. And they just see the beautiful, tapestry of the story of our city, and their heart is changed, and they go from complaining about their city and focusing on what they can consume to really becoming like, somebody who is a good neighbor and contributing
say
to the
they're
flourishing of
becoming-
their city.
For Evansville.
They're becoming for Evansville. That's right.
And this is how our films get written.
Yeah. I'm serious though. I really do think we're going to make this into a children's book, and we're going to
Be sold
sell
at
it to people.
River City.
Yeah, I think it'll be great.
This is one of those things too where like over the last year everyone is obviously learning more and utilizing more AI. And we started out using it like this is a fun tool, or this is like a toy, and now it's a tool I think that we utilize pretty frequently. But this was one of those things where like let's ask AI to write us a children's story, and then I think Adrian also had it make a
Made a song.
So we have a song
There
about
is
Captain Elijah.
a theme song
Yep.
for this
Ghost
part.
Barge.
Yep.
Maybe we'll
amazing.
launch it when the riverfront is finished,
That's a great idea.
which means it'll launch in 100 years. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it wasn't that long.
10
It's
years.
coming.
Sounds like you might need a visit from Captain Elijah with that attitude.
I do.
All right.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
we want to get into
Yeah,
talking
let's get
about
into
some of the more maybe more productive things that have happened over the last 6 months. I'll maybe kick it off by talking about an event that we had right at the beginning of the year, and feels like it was so long ago. Like
Well,
6
you know,
months feels
people-
like.
People ask us, like, I think one of those questions is like, what do you guys do? And sometimes even we have a hard time being like, well, here are like some things we do. But when we actually sat down to make this list for this podcast today, I think we all were like,
How did we do all this in 6
we
months?
did a lot. Yeah. And so I'm excited just to put it all in one place, and so that you guys can hear these things too. And yeah, and kind of like see the story. There's like an underlying story behind all of these that they're connected. And because we actually have a strategy for things. So
right. Yeah. They're all pieced together.
Get a vision for that.
Yeah. And we can't cover everything in this podcast, but some of the highlights. So an event we've settled pretty much on doing this every January now. The first year that we did it, we did one in January and one in September, but we've pretty well settled on January with our Imagine Evansville event. And I would say this year's Imagine Evansville event, in my opinion, was maybe the best one that we've had. They've all been really good. We have great speakers and great people who attend, but there was something really special about this one. And I would say this one was sort of unique in that over the last 6 months, we continue to hear from people who said, hey, I was at your Imagine Evansville event, and here are some things that have happened that have been like really significant for me. And so Imagine Evansville is basically it's our event where we kind of open it up to anybody in the community, and it's about imagining an Evansville where everyone can flourish. And we choose specific topics and specific stories that kind of highlight features of what that might look like. And at least two people have, I've learned of at least two people who made like significant career changes because of their experience at Imagine Evansville. One was because of, actually, I think both of them had a lot to do with Principal Amy Bonenberger's talk, because they both shifted into positions where they were serving kids specifically. And something about that talk just really connected with them in a powerful way. We've also seen like the panel that was on kind of new American communities in Evansville. We've seen that group who are on that panel continue to work together, and now they're launching the Immigrant Welcome Center, which was in the works already. That's not because of Imagine Evansville, but it was cool that Imagine Evansville sort of got to be an initial public sort of conversation about those needs. And it was, I think, for people who attended Imagine Evansville, it was their first exposure to a lot of those stories. And now they're having the opportunity to connect with these resources and opportunities and support them in different ways.
I think that's the beauty of Imagine Evansville, is that there are things that are happening on, like, that people just kind of get in bubbles, and things are happening, great things are happening, and a lot of things are happening in the immigrant community. But we also, so we're connected with that, but we're also connected with kind of the more typical attenders of Imagine Evansville, which might be business, church leaders, that kind of thing. And then they're all of a sudden brought into that world, like, oh. So then when you hear, even me, like at that time I was on maternity leave, so I just came and attended. And afterwards, just even a couple of days ago, heard something about the immigration center. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I know I have more of a connection to that than just hearing about it and being like, oh, okay. I don't
because you've met some of the people who are behind it. You've heard their stories.
Yeah.
You've heard their heart behind it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's so, hearing from two different business owners too, that just said they just started thinking differently about when they're interviewing people and people they want to connect to, or people they already have working, how can they help them in some of the ways that just understanding their experience of coming into Evansville and maybe a whole new culture. And I just thought that was so beautiful, because again, it humanizes people and their experiences, instead of, we're at a very high political climate right now, where you hear different things about people that are not humanizing them. They kind of dehumanize them based on stereotypes or just things that we hear. And so actually getting to talk to people and hearing that, man, Evansville is a welcoming place. Yeah. And we want to continue to be that. And we have actual people that you can connect to learn how to do that better. Yeah. It was really great. And I think two people reached out to Ellie, who was on our panel, to just learn more. And I think that's so cool that they now have a person to reach out to. Yeah. Yeah. And being able to say, how can our company become more accessible to folks who maybe don't have familiarity with, legal processes here or employment processes. It's really cool. One of the things that I've also really
liked about how we did Imagine Evansville this year is I think we were much more intentional about kind of follow-up opportunities and connecting people who had attended Imagine Evansville to opportunities later on. And one of those was, again, with Principal Amy Bonenberger's talk about Lodge Community School. We wanted to create opportunities for not just attendees of Imagine Evansville, but other community members to connect directly with the school and become school partners, to connect to our school partnership network to learn how to be good partners, but also to learn the needs of the school and build a relationship there. And I think a lot of that really started, Sarah, with kind of an experience that you had at the school, just touring the school.
Yeah.
Would you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was something that, over a year ago, we had someone from EVSC reach out to us and said, hey, Lodge Community, we know you guys help get partners for a school. Lodge Community School needs partners. Can you help? And we're like, great. Adrian, why don't we go meet with the principal there and learn more? And so we went over and we met with Principal Amy Bonenberger, the vice principal, and then someone from EVSC as well. And so we just learned about the school. And as we're sitting there, we start hearing these stats. And I promise you, for the next year, my brain consistently thinks about those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a part of Evansville I had never been to. I learned more about how difficult it can be for not only the people working in the school, because they, like over 40%, it's their first time in the school. So it's their first year there. So they don't have any background of like, hey, this is the experience with this child, maybe the year before. And also kids coming in and they can't actually communicate well because English is not their first language. And so they
Something like 30%, right, of
and
students.
that's grown, from the last year. And so that conversation led to, hey, Jonathan, you should check out, learn more. And then I think Jeremy. From Dream Center did a tour. And for you guys, that was really impactful. And we're like, what could we do to get more people to just walk through here and hear from the principal and learn those stats and not just hear them from us talking about them on a video, but actually be there. And so we thought, okay, let's set it up. And honestly, I think we thought we'd get 5 to 10 people. And we had 26, 27 people show up to the point where there was standing room only. And we
didn't even really, I feel like we didn't even advertise for it that much. It was just like, hey, here's an opportunity to check out a school. People really, I think from Amy's talk at Imagine Evansville, really, people were like, yeah, I really want to show up.
I will say we were pretty intentional about our invites. We had a list that Amy gave us. And so we did reach out to some specific people, but then we also just publicly talked about it. And I think people are very interested in learning. And the idea is that we know that we're not going to be the final solution to any of this, but we can be a part of helping people get in the room who are going to be interested and learn more in today. We can't allow this to keep happening in the way that it is without support, because what they're doing at Lodge is incredible, and we want to support them. And EVSC is very passionate about those things as well. But there's so many opportunities for people to get in there, and so I think that's what I've got really excited about, is seeing so many people get in there to learn more, and now they're walking around with that same information in their head. Yeah,
and I would say too that the tour was just kind of the next step in kind of our relationship with Lodge Community School and helping to bring those partners around. We really see that as like a really important place in our city right now. It has the highest density of children experiencing poverty in our 5-county region, not just in our city, but in our 5-county region. And a lot of that impacts the school, and the school is kind of the front lines of, trying to help support and empower those students and their families. And there are a lot of great leaders at that school and within EVSC who are, leaning in and answering that call. But it's not something that a school is meant to, do all of that. It's a whole community kind of thing. And I think we're really fortunate to live in a community where the school system has a process for community partners to be able to join with the school and help ensure that students have what they need to show up and learn. And there are a lot of challenges, but there are also lots of great community partners who can step in and play all kinds of different roles to help students be successful.
I think we can't state enough how incredible the principal there is.
Oh, yeah.
How amazing she is. And I just want to highlight one thing that Jonathan's been invited into some of the conversations that they've been having as new funding has come in to think about it. And I remember one thing that you said I think is so impactful that as they've had some funding come in from other grants and things, a lot of times you hear like, hey, here's funding. What can we do right now? And that's great. And we want to do that. But Amy said, this is great. I want to do this for now. But what can I do that will last for years and years and years?
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool that they're thinking, how can we make this a place that people are going to flourish for a really long time?
Yeah. She's definitely a very visionary leader. And they've, the funding opportunities that they've had, they're part of Evansville Promise Neighborhood. They've also received some investment from the Toyota Foundation over a period of 5 years. And you're right, it would be really easy to say, okay, we have this funding for 5 years. Let's do this and this and this and kind of meet these short-term needs that we have. But Principal Bonenberger and, the folks from EVSC are really thinking, how can we take a long-term vision here and leverage this funding to establish some things that are going to last for a long time? And a lot of that is around that, establishing that community school idea, that the community, that the school would be sort of a hub, not just for students, but also for their families, and that a lot of resources would be able to be accessible there.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited to be part of that journey. We've been able to sort of play the role of connecting resources from elsewhere in the community that are available in other neighborhoods, but maybe aren't represented in the neighborhood around Lodge Community School. And so we're excited to see that continue to grow and flourish.
I think it says something that EVSC reached out to us and said, hey, can you help with this school? And then that you've been invited into these conversations of what can we do with the funding. But these are just two things we just covered, which was Imagine Evansville and the school tour. We have a lot more to cover. So before we wrap up this little section, you can already go to the Imagine Evansville page for 2025, which is forevansville.org/imagine, which we'll put all this stuff in the show notes. But in that, you can see there are previous talks. And so you can actually go and watch Amy's talk if that is something that interests you.
Yeah.
2025 sounds so futuristic.
It really does.
That's really freaking
I feel
me
like
out.
in
The future begins next year.
Yeah, in movies,
2025.
like I feel like there's some sort of futuristic movie that's like if this takes place in 2025.
Yeah.
Blade Runner.
That's what I think. Was it
I
Blade
think
Runner?
so. I don't know.
That's 2025? Okay.
As we're talking about neighborhoods, though, we did have someone come in and talk about neighborhoods with some folks. Adrian, can you tell us the story of how that happened?
Our new
My
best friend.
Best friend, Tim Swartz. Yeah, that was a long process, even for me personally. Having read a book during the pandemic about neighborhoods, and that's when Tim's book came out. And so I, when we're all just on social media way too much, I just happened upon a talk that he was doing over Instagram. So I watched it and was really changed by it. And so I didn't even work here at the time, which kind of shows you how I feel like God goes before us in a lot of ways. And so it just seemed to keep coming up, especially with our neighborhood revitalization focus. And I was just like, I think we should reach out to him. Like, he's got this book called Everywhere You Look, finding the church in neighborhoods. And so I just sent him an Instagram message and he responded, and he ended up coming and talking to not only like church leaders and pastors and kind of getting them on vision of this idea of the church building, or like the church acting more like a parish in the sense of focusing on the neighborhood and community around it, and just being a center for hope. But also we got to talk to some community leaders as well, like nonprofits and
who are doing
that
work.
neighborhood work. Yeah, just more for like, I think what we ended up with his visit just being really overwhelmed by just the conversations that we were having, that we were on the same page, and just more being encouraged by that, and more vision casting, because he does this work on a national level. So he's in tune. But I think what was most surprising is how impressed or excited he was about the work that Evansville is doing. That there were so many people that are already thinking about this, and there are such good organizations doing this work. And so that was kind of an affirmation for us that the work that we're doing, but also the work that all of the organizations that we work with are doing is like really good work.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's really a theme that I've seen in a lot of experiences that we've had, not just this year, but in previous years too. In fact, two of the examples I think we're going to talk about are one is a learning trip that I got to be a part of where we went somewhere else and observed kind of what was going on in their community. Another is where somebody wanted to come to Evansville and learn. But in both of those instances, it's sort of been this affirmation that we kind of have everything that we need in Evansville to transform our community. Like all the right ideas, all the right organizations and leaders are here. What's missing is for all of those pieces to kind of be integrated together and to have the kind of reach that we need to have across our community. So there are sort of these different pockets of movement happening in different neighborhoods. And a big part of what For Evansville wants to do is just be the sort of silent connective tissue between those pieces and to bring them all together around a shared vision and around a shared set of like outcomes that we're pursuing, so that every neighborhood across our community is experiencing that kind of place-based, person-centric transformation, and that anybody in our community can see how they fit into that picture. But I would say too, I think in the same way that Imagine Evansville this year was more than just the event, I feel like having Tim Sorens in, one of the things that we did differently was we hosted other like smaller intentional conversations while he was here, to help kind of develop some of those ideas and connections. And then we're being intentional about like staying connected with churches. We had, I think, 8 churches that said, hey, I'm really interested in like engaging with this more and learning what my church can do to be more neighborhood focused and neighborhood centric. And so we've continued to do a lot of more behind the scenes, like one-on-one relational kind of work with those churches to follow up with them and say, hey, how's this going? What are you learning? What connections can we help make and things like that. So I'm excited to see where that leads and how churches in our community, continue on that journey of learning. Some
of the things were really simple, like just doing a tour of some specific neighborhoods, or maybe even a learning tour of your own neighborhood, that you're the place where your institutional church, your building is actually located, and learning more about that neighborhood. So it was really, I think that was really great to see people want to do that and to learn more, and to learn more about other organizations that are not us, but we can connect them to who are already doing that work.
Yeah, so. Right. Yeah. So one of those examples that I mentioned was we had a foundation from Muncie that was interested in coming to Evansville and just learning about a lot of those different things that are happening. I just talked about we have kind of all the solutions that we need here in our city. And so somehow Muncie had gotten wind of that and wanted to come and learn. And so I got a phone call from Jeremy Evans at Dream Center.
It's my favorite
and
part
Sarah,
of the story.
you were there, so I'll let you kind of share that story from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. From my perspective, so again, as we said at the beginning of this episode, all of our desks are in a room. It's not very big, so unless we walk out, we can usually kind of hear what's going on. And Jonathan gets a phone call. It's Jeremy, and I hear Jonathan continue to say, he goes, well, we'd be happy to help with that. We love herding cats is actually the line that he said. And then as he got off the phone, what he was referring to is that this foundation out of Muncie wanted to learn. They said, hey, you guys have a lot of great things going on in Evansville, received funding from the Evansville Promise Neighborhoods Grant, and we'd love to learn what organizations kind of are doing to be a part of making that happen. Yeah. And there was 8 different organizations, actually more than that, that they wanted to learn from. And they want to know if over 2 days they could meet with each one of them.
Yep.
And didn't Jeremy say, you guys are good at that?
Yeah. Jeremy.
Getting people together.
Yeah. I'll tell you what Jeremy Evans is like an expert at initiating relationships like that. I feel like I feel pretty confident there's probably nobody in the world that Jeremy couldn't like start a relationship with and like reach them somehow. He's just very, very good at that. And so
he saw me at a coffee shop once and was like, I've been trying to get a hold of your dad, but nobody's helping me. You're his daughter. Call him.
He knows how to navigate
okay.
a network. Yeah, I think. And he uses those skills for the good of our community a lot. But I don't know the backstory behind how this relationship with the Ball Foundation in Muncie had developed, but I do know that they had applied for Promise Neighborhood funding there in Muncie, and they knew that Evansville had received Promise Neighborhood funding, and that there were a lot of good things going on. And so Jeremy reached out to us as kind of like, hey, you guys are good at you have connections to all these organizations, and you're pretty good at coordinating this kind of thing. And so we were happy to sort of facilitate that learning trip. And over the course of 2 days, we had the opportunity to meet with 8 different organizations, including like Evansville Promise Neighborhood, the mayor's office, and the Department of Metropolitan Development, Building Blocks, EVSC, the Wellborn Foundation, and several others, Community One.
EREP, and we even went out, EVSC, we got to go out and see one of their programs that is connected with Barry, which was incredible to just get to see the things that are happening there. I think, obviously, for us, our role was to kind of facilitate. I learned so much just getting to sit in those conversations and be a part of that. So I was really grateful that. But if you are someone who plans things, to make that happen over 2 days I can't believe that it happened. But we made it work.
Even just coordinating the schedules of that many very high capacity, high demand leaders in our community was borderline miraculous. We also had the opportunity to have them sit down with our Cradle to Career Network, the folks with Dream Center, Potter's Wheel, Audubon Kids Zone, who are thinking about that Cradle to Career picture. And I think what was really cool about that experience, again, it was an affirmation that our community, there isn't like some solution happening in some other city that's like, oh, we need to replicate that here. Mm-hmm. The solutions that we need are all here already. And what we need is for them to be aligned around a shared vision and to have a shared strategy for how do we make sure that these resources are accessible to every child in our community.
Are you segueing perfectly into our Promise Summit event?
Not on purpose, but that's a great idea. Let's go to there. Yeah.
Well, that's what I do. We were saying, like you said, those 3 organizations, Dream Center, Potter's Wheel, and AKZ, they they work in their own neighborhoods, focusing on Cradle to Career, and then we got them together for a Promise Summit, which has already happened in the past, but they've asked us now to facilitate those, and we got to gather them, and again share some maybe new information. More focused, but then also let them have a lot of time to talk with one another, say like, what's working for you guys, what's not, what are some hard things.
Yeah, really the 2 kind of outcomes of those gatherings are for them to like develop and share best practices, like, hey, here are the best ways to do the work that we're doing, and to continue to develop that and make it better together and innovate. And then to have conversations about kind of like, what are the system level things that we're seeing that need to change, and how can we address those?
Yeah.
And so it's a space where neighborhood based practitioners are sort of given the space to kind of step away from those environments and have a more reflective space to learn and innovate together.
And it's important too that like those organizations are actually coming up with the content they want to talk about.
Yeah.
So we meet with them, we ask them, what do you guys want to talk about? Who do you want to talk about it? And we just kind of help facilitate and make that happen, which is really great. Again, it's another place where we're helping, but we're not the ones doing that work and leading it. We just get to support making that collaboration continue to happen.
Yeah. We don't we don't think that we know more about the work that they do
We
than
do
they
not.
do. But what we
Right.
can do is help to facilitate and convene.
Yeah,
So
like listen to all three of them, find the common threads, and then bring it to them all together and kind of focus those questions, like things that we asked for them to discuss.
yeah,
I think a lot of the feedback we got from that event was that it just helped them feel seen. I think there were specific, like, I have this role here, and I got to meet with like somebody in Potter's Wheel with that role.
Yeah.
And we got to connect personally. And so I may feel siloed at my own job, but I know that someone else is out there doing that same work. And so it was cool to have them all together in a room like that. But it also was kind of visionary for me in seeing like, okay, this is what we talk about, what we want to do is bring people together around common issues.
yeah,
And there are a lot of people doing a lot of great things. Like we said, we have everything we need, but there's not really a time or a entity that brings them together to do this. And that's why we exist, is
Yeah.
so that we can do that and provide that. So they don't have, each organization doesn't have to recreate the wheel by themselves
yeah,
or tackle these problems by themselves. They can have a larger, grander vision.
yeah. It helps not just the leaders of those organizations, but also the teams, the employees of those organizations recognize that they're part of a larger movement that's happening beyond just their organization and beyond just their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And to envision, like, what would it look like for this movement to continue to grow to more neighborhoods and for more organizations and community partners to see what it looks like to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, if you aren't familiar with Audubon Kids Zone, Potter's Wheel, Dream Center Evansville, just Google and learn more. They're doing incredible work that is having major impact, and they've been doing it for a while, and it's continuing to grow, and we would love to see that continue to grow in our 5-county region. And when they gather together, they're creating best practices that if someone new comes in and wants to do this work, they're going to be able to help them right away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things they've learned over the last 10 plus years that they're going to be able to help the next people coming in to do that too.
yeah, they're really sort of the local pioneers of this cradle to career approach, and it's really inspiring and impactful.
So can you, like, for some listeners who may not be familiar with the term cradle to career, someone want to give like a quick
Yeah,
2
yeah.
minutes or less?
Yeah, in fact, that'll segue well into the next thing that I wanted to share. So the idea of cradle to career is it's an approach that says, hey, we want to not just provide sort of segmented services to kids, but we want to make a promise to a kid that we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they are college, career, and life ready. So if you'll join us and work with us and be part of this movement, we're going to kind of bring together all the necessary resources that you need. And we're going to stay with you through that whole journey. We're going to walk with you through that whole time so that you don't fall through the cracks. And I think the thing that's so innovative about that approach is that there is a depth and a commitment to it, and it ties together so many pieces that already exist. And so it's like, okay, if I'm in third grade and I'm part of a program that helps me do really well in third grade, but then I don't have those same supports when I'm in fourth and fifth grade, then it's the impact is not going to carry me all the way to where I need to go. And so we've become really interested in this approach because we believe that being able to reach that educational attainment, for a child to be able to be well educated and to graduate high school ready to go to college or ready to enter a career that's going to provide for their needs is transformational to so many other community needs that our community is facing. And so, we see that happening here in our community. We also went last month, traveled to a place called South Salt Lake, which is a small community just south of Salt Lake City, where the city government actually has adopted this approach and created a department of their city government, I think called the Promise Department or Promise South Salt Lake. And so the idea is, hey, we want to extend that promise to every child in our community, that if you live in this community, you're going to have what you need to be college, career, and life ready. And we're going to, build sort of the pathway of resources to empower you to do that. And we had the privilege of traveling there with, the organizations that we mentioned who are part of that Cradle to Career Network here locally, along with Mayor Stephanie Terry and the leadership of Evansville Promise Neighborhoods, and being able to go and observe what it can look like for a whole community to buy into that idea was really powerful and really inspiring. And a big part of what we're hoping to support going forward, both over the course of the rest of this year as well as over the next several years, is what does that look like here in Evansville for our whole community to see where they fit in that cradle to career pipeline for a child. To say, okay, I might not be a nonprofit leader, I might not work in education, but we're all part of this community together, and there are so many factors that play into a child's ability to grow and to learn and to flourish. And so we want to help create spaces where everybody in our community is able to see where they fit in that and able to align what they're doing around that shared vision.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot, guys. We've done a lot already.
Yeah.
There's multiple things on our list we haven't even got to, but I know
cover.
we're running. I will just highlight quickly that we are hosting the Global Leadership Summit this year. And it's first time
2 weeks.
Yeah. As we're,
I guess
the
1
moment
week
we're recording
after
this.
this, yeah.
And our first year actually kind of being the lead on that, but obviously working with other organizations and volunteers who are helping make that happen.
Yeah.
But we've had to raise the
seating capacity.
The seating capacity twice, and we are just a few tickets from being sold out, and so we're very excited to gather people in the room for that. But we did a lot of things leading up to that, tried some experiments, gathered people from healthcare, law enforcement, and marketplace leaders to gather and have a lunch and watch a talk and learn more about that, and we had some people sign up after that. So and just invested in those folks as well. So that was just another big thing, but quickly got to mention that we've done.
Yeah. And there are, like you said, there are many more things that we could mention, but we don't have time for.
Let's
but we
do quickly
want to
like
take
what we're looking forward to for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And one of those things is our next podcast series that will come up after this. And the reason that before we get into the mini series, we wanted to do a podcast mini series that focused on kind of an aspect of our work that we're sort of in the early development of right now, which internally we refer to as church integration. I don't know that we've found the better flashier term for that yet, but we call it church integration because all of this work that we're talking about, a big piece of what For Evansville is passionate about is helping the local church, helping followers of Jesus in our community become integrated into that transformational work in a way that is bringing kind of the hope and love of Jesus into those spaces in a transformational way. So it's saying, if I'm a follower of Jesus and I want to love my neighbors and I want to be, the biblical term is salt and light in my community, and I want to help make our community more like the kingdom of God. I want to help our community become more of a place where everybody flourishes and experiences life the way that God intended. We see all of these things happening in our community as like the best way to do that. And we want to help anybody in our community understand where they fit in that picture. And so we're working on a couple specific programs to help individuals kind of discover how they can view their faith as a catalyst for flourishing in our community and do that in a really actionable way, as well as a program that will help churches kind of think about that and guide them through a process of understanding what they can uniquely do in our community. But as we're developing those things, we wanted to create a space where we could just highlight stories of where's that happening in our city already? Where are individuals and communities of people really seeing their faith in Jesus and their practice of the Christian faith, not just as a means of individual transformation, but as a means of community transformation and as something that's going to really advance human flourishing in our city.
Yeah. So I think a large, like if you want a good solid overview, you can read Tim Soren's book, Everywhere You Look, because it's that idea that Christians, especially in our area, 84% say that they're Christian. That means in any given neighborhood, the church is very present. Yeah. And so instead of relying on maybe these kind of old ingrained ideas that to make transformational impact in your city, you have to be a part of your church's outreach, specifically doing things, maybe love your neighbor days type of things, which are all great things. But this is getting people more in the mindset of every day, what am I paying attention to? What does God want me to pay attention to? And how can I join in what he's doing in my own spaces and my own neighborhoods? I think it's going to tie well coming straight off of Liturgy of the Neighborhood, because it is more of those high level, like what churches and rhythms do we have in our daily life, to hearing very specific stories of people in our community who have had moments. And they're going to be small moments that can add up. I think as we lay them all out for the whole series, we'll see that there's a lot of little things happening that can catch on to this bigger vision of the church having a greater impact in our city.
Yeah.
And so just getting people to open up their eyes and just and pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Yeah. And so that's the series title. It took us a while, brainstormed lots of fun topics, but we ended up with Stories Beyond the Pew. So that's what our series title is going to be. Yeah. I feel like we need a little like do music or something.
I can make it happen.
Press the fanfare button.
Even if you don't sit in a pew, you get it. Okay, just calm down.
Yeah, our church has chairs. I don't understand this title.
Well, my church has pews, so
yeah. So we're excited to hear those stories. And again, I think that's an excellent point. That it's about helping people see that. Engaging our city in that way is not just through volunteering, not just through making donations, but that we're all ingrained and embedded in the city already, and we're all part of the community. And so we all have opportunities from the place that we already are and from the things that we already do to be a part of what's happening in our community and to shift things toward flourishing in a powerful way. So we're excited to hear those stories, and we hope you'll join us for them.
You can also share those stories with us if you have some.
Yeah.
And once you start listening, and I'd love to, you can send us an email. Tell us a story that you might have in your own neighborhood.
Ooh, I also want to say one more thing real quick. I know we're running long. I just want to take a moment to thank people who have supported For Evansville, because all of this work that we talk about, none of it would happen if it weren't for people who have partnered with us to help make that happen. And some of those have been like organizations or foundations, and some of those have been individual people. And so if that's you, we're really grateful for your support. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm excited about this work and I want to learn more about what it would mean to partner with For Evansville, then we'd love to talk with you about that. You can find more on our website at forevansville.org. Reach out to us and connect, or if you want to make a donation, you can do that at forevansville.org/give.
Yep.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.